Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava. Do you know the song, Jaya Radha Madhava? You do. Good. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivijikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivijikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapraya Shabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Ananda, can you get those curtains for me? Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of May, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 8, Withdrawal of the Cosmic Creations. Chapter 9, the Lord incarnates as Mohini Murti. Text number 25. Okay. Chakrena Chura Dharena Jahara Pibadah Shidaha Haris Tasya Kabandhas Tu Sudaya Plavito Apatat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahada Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahada Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahada Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahara Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahara Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahara Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Chakrena Chudadharena Jahara Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat Anyway. Chakrena Chudadharena Jahada Pibatak Shiraha Haris Tasya Kabandhastu Sudaya Plavito Patat. Anyone online want to try?
Chakrena Chudadharena
Chakrena Chudadharena
Jahara Pibata Shiraha
Jahada Pibatak Shiraha
Haris Tasya Kabandhastu
Haris Tasya Kabandhastu
Sudaya Plavito Patat
Sudaya Plavito Patat. Chakrena by the disc, Chudadharena, which was sharp like a razor, Jahara, cut off, Pibataha, while drinking nectar, Shidaha, the head, Harihi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Tasya, of that Rahu, Kabandhatu, but the headless body, Sudaya, by the nectar, Aplavitaha, without being touched, Apatat, immediately fell dead. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, in the form of Mohini Murti, using his disc, which was sharp like a razor, at once cut off Rahu's head. When Rahu's head was severed from his body, the body, being untouched by the nectar, could not survive. Purport: when the Personality of Godhead, Mohini Murti, severed Rahu's head from his body, the head remained alive, although the body died. Rahu had been drinking nectar through his mouth, and before the nectar entered his body, his head was cut off. Thus Rahu's head remained alive, whereas the body died. This wonderful act performed by the Lord was meant to show that nectar is miraculous ambrosia. Now, Mukund is not here, and I neglected to look on the sheet, see if I'm supposed to read another verse or not. We can all chant Hare Krishna in our mind while he's doing that. All right, go on to 26. I'll just read the English. Rahu's head, however, through 28, Rahu's head, however, having been touched by the nectar, became immortal. Thus Lord Brahma accepted Rahu's head as one of the planets. Since Rahu is an eternal enemy of the moon and the sun, he always tries to attack them on the nights of the full moon and the dark moon. Purport. Since Rahu had become immortal, Lord Brahma accepted him as one of the grahas, or planets. Like the moon and the sun, Rahu, however, being an eternal enemy of the moon and sun, attacks them periodically during the nights of the full moon and the dark moon. Text 27. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the best friend and well-wisher of the three worlds. Thus, when the demigods had almost finished drinking the nectar, the Lord, in the presence of all the demons, disclosed his original form. The place, the time, the cause, the purpose, the activity, and the ambition were all the same for both the demigods and the demons. But the demigods achieved one result and the demons another. Because the demigods are always under the shelter of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, they could very easily drink the nectar and get its result. The demons, however, not having sought shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, were unable to achieve the result they desired. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.11, it is said, Ye yatamam papadyante, tang tataiva bhajamyaham. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme judge who rewards or punishes different persons according to their surrender unto his lotus feet. Therefore, it can actually be seen that although karmīs and bhaktas may work in the same place, at the same time, with the same energy, and with the same ambition, they achieve different results. The karmīs transmigrate through different bodies in the cycle of birth and death, sometimes going upward, sometimes downward, thus suffering the results of their actions in the karma chakra, the cycle of birth and death. The devotees, however, because of fully surrendering at the lotus feet of the Lord, are never baffled in their attempts. Although externally they work almost like the karmīs, the devotees go back home, back to Godhead, and achieve success in every effort. The demons or atheists have faith in their own endeavors, but although they work very hard day and night, they cannot get any more than their destiny. The devotees, however, can surpass the reactions of karma and achieve wonderful results even without effort. It is also said, Palena parichiyate. One's success or defeat in any activity is understood by its result. There are many karmīs in the dress of devotees, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can detect their purpose. The karmīs want to use the property of the Lord for their selfish sense gratification. But the devotee endeavors to use the Lord's property for God's service. Therefore, a devotee is always distinct from the karmīs, although the karmīs may dress like devotees. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 3.9, Yagyartat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha. One who works for Lord Vishnu is free from this material world, and after giving up his body, he goes back home, back to Godhead. A karmī, however, although externally working like a devotee, is entangled in his non-devotional activity, and thus he suffers the tribulations of material existence. Thus, from the results achieved by the karmīs and devotees, one can understand the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who acts differently for the karmīs and jnanis than for the devotees. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita therefore says, Krishna bhakta nishkama ata eva shanta. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta. The karmīs who desire sense gratification, the jnanis who aspire for the liberation of merging into the existence of the Supreme, and the yogis who seek material success and mystic power are all restless, and ultimately they are baffled. But the devotee who does not expect any personal benefit and whose only ambition is to spread the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is blessed with all the auspicious results of Bhakti Yoga without hard labor. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is the, I would say, a conclusion of part of this pastime of churning the ocean. And we see that as Prabhupada, as explained in this last verse here, the kind of conclusive verse, the place, the time, the cause, the purpose, the activity, and the ambition were all the same for both the demigods and the demons. So they declared a truce, right? They weren't going to fight each other to the death at this point. And they're going to churn the ocean of milk. And both of them had the ambition of being able to get the nectar and drink the nectar, which is the word nectar. There's something very amazing about the word nectar, not only in Sanskrit, but in English. Of course, the word in Sanskrit is amrita, which very obviously means immortality, or that which brings about immortality. Mrita is a cognate for mortuary, mortal in English, death. Mritu means death. So amrita means that which can protect you from death, make you deathless. That's the idea of amrita. And the word nectar means the same thing. Think of the word necromancy or necrotic or something. Death. It's about death. Part of your flesh dies and it's necrotic. That's a serious problem, medical problem. Is it? So, and necromancy has something to do with invoking death. I forget. So that nek is a I think Greek root that means death, and tar is the same as tarine. It's right there in the Sanskrit. So it means saving you from death. Nectar. The same English word means the same thing. I discovered that many years ago. So the attraction of being deathless draw them both in and said, well, we can do better. You know, we can't do this alone, so we need the help from the other side in order to churn this huge mountain. And indeed, they miscalculated how much it weighed, and some of them were crushed and were trying to lift it and bring it over. But they got the mercy of the Lord, and he came down on Garuda, and he easily put it with one hand. You can imagine, put the big mountain on the back of Garuda, and they carried it to the ocean of milk there. And then they were so eager to start, they just put the big mountain in the ocean, and they had Vasuki, the major snake of Nagaloka, the head of Nagaloka, where all the snakes like to reside. And they started churning, but they neglected to have some basis for the thing, and it started to sink into the ocean. So Krishna came as Kurma, just appropriate incarnation, and got down under there, and he was the pivot for it. And it explains elsewhere, I don't know if it explains here, I forgot, if he also felt pleasure on the itching, scratching the back, you know. So now they're really getting going, and they churn and churn and churn, and what comes out first? Poison. Poison. That's the first challenge, right? So neither the demigods nor the demons knew what to do about that, but they knew that Shiva, that he has such great power that he could drink the poison. So he did, and saved everybody, and the result was his neck turned blue. That was the only result of his drinking the poison. Any other person drinking even a drop of it would have immediately died. So then the churning went on, and then Lakshmi came out, and Airavata came out, Indra's mount, he came out also. Uchchaishrava, was that mentioned in this? He also came out, that's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, I think. So everything started to come, different things coming out. And eventually, out comes Dhanvantari with the jar of nectar. Even though it's just a jar, it's understood that as many people can drink it as possible, you know. So what did the demons do? They snatched it immediately, you know. So, well, that's the end of our cooperation. We'll get it all and we'll drink it ourselves, right? So but Krishna had other plans. So he came, this is the whole thing with Lakshmi that happened before this happened, and then I think after that, then the nectar came out. So then Krishna appears in this unique form, Mohini Murti. And she's just, you know, it's hard to imagine how attractive she was on in a feminine level, in a feminine way. Because Krishna is all attractive as he is, threefold bending form, Govinda, you know. So that same power of attractiveness was now displayed through these womanly features. And this she's described here. And the demons were just completely bewildered by that. They became attracted. And she started joking with them, how, you know, you don't really deserve any nectar and everything. And, but they were just transfixed. And so she said, okay, so if you agree to abide by my instructions, you know, for the disbursement of this nectar, then we can proceed, you know. So they said, okay, no problem, you know. And they were just transfixed. So the first thing, she separated the demons and the devotees. And they were separated from quite a different space. And then she said, well, I'm going to serve this out to the demigods first, the devotees, demigods. And there was no objection, you know. They just completely trusted in her. They were bewildered because they had all this lust for this. It's Krishna, you know, he manifested. And they were just, you know, completely taken over because she was paying attention to them. You know what I mean? So she goes and starts distributing it to the demigods. Now Rahu is described that he could tell that there was, you know, this is going to happen. So he disguised himself as a demigod and he gets sat down amongst all the demigods. And then it says something interesting. Then even Krishna couldn't tell in the form of Mohini Murti. Well, why not? Isn't he omniscient? You know. So he played it not understanding. So then he understood finally, and he immediately described in one of the verses we read that he cut off the head of Rahu. But before that, he had been able to drink a little bit. You know, it's almost like he didn't even swallow it. If he swallowed it, it would have gone in his body. So he just swallowed it. It was in his mouth. You know, it was in his head. So boom, his body was dead, but his head was immortal now. You know, so Brahma said, all right. So we recognize him as a regular planet, and still he. Now I understood he also is involved in eclipses, isn't it? Here it says during the new moon and the full moon. So he can also eclipse our life in a way. Yeah. Rahu is definitely a negative planet influence in astrology. So now the point is being made. This is kind of one of the verses in the pastime in which there's a kind of a conclusion. There's a philosophical point, and that is that the place, the time, the cause, the purpose, everything was the same for the demigods and the demons, but they got opposite results. Because the demigods are by definition, they're demigods because they're surrendered to the Lord. You know, sometimes they go off the reservation a little bit like Indra, you know, but basically they're devotees, and he always comes back and you know, and he's got a very responsible position. There's that story about how Indra once was cursed. He gets cursed a lot to become a hog, you know. So he came down and to the earth, and he was a hog. He had a hog family, he had his wife and many children, you know, responsible hog. And but his duties in the heaven weren't being carried out. He's in charge of the weather, and he's, you know, managing. So Brahma said, this won't do. So he came down to the hog pen, and he informed Indra the hog that he's really Indra, and we need you to come back to the heavenly planets and resume. You know, so I can't leave. I got my family now, you know, and I'm well employed here, and I've got my special diet. And so, and I've heard Prabhupada tell this, but he doesn't often tell. I heard him tell it once this way, and it must be in the Shastra this way too. Although I don't remember reading it in the Bhagavatam. That because Indra wouldn't come back, he was so attached that Brahma killed all his little hoglets and his wife, hog wife, you know. And then he didn't. It was a shock, obviously, but then he came out of it and he came back to the heavens. So the idea is that that because the demigods, they have responsible positions, they're devotees, and so Krishna favors them. And this is a general principle that we may be doing the same thing. I remember, the history of the movement is that when the movement expanded, and in LA, especially on the West Coast, expanded even more than in the East Coast. It was started in the East Coast, obviously, in 22nd Avenue. But then when the San Francisco was founded, and soon the LA came, and there were many more candidates for joining out in the West Coast, the Summer of Love, all these things. So it really increased, and they had to get some Lakshmi. In other words, they had to run these temples, and what was it going to? They didn't have the incense business yet. They didn't have book distribution yet. So Prabhupada said, "Well, okay, you can get jobs, because don't forget, when 22nd Avenue, the reason why it could really flourish is because Satsarup Maharaj, I think Rupanuga, Brahmananda, they all had responsible jobs, and they were willing to give the Lakshmi to the temple. Give it. Prabhupada said, "You can give it to Krishna." And said, "How can we give it to Krishna?" Prabhupada said, "You just give it to me, and I'll make sure it goes to Krishna." Which they did. So you had these three guys who had, I think, government jobs in one way or another, and so it was enough to sustain everything until they started having other means of collection. So this is, how Krishna works. We may do the same work. You may see the same work. And yet, because the motive is different, in Krishna consciousness, everything depends on why you're doing it. You're even eating and sleeping. It comes to the point. Well, look, I have to eat to keep my strength up. Probably, and so you eat. This is a service you're doing, and you're appreciating because Krishna had eaten it. So it becomes a sacred act. It's not just eating, And the same thing is true for everything that we do, even sleeping. You have to get your rest and take care, like that, for the purpose of Krishna service. And that sanctifies everything you do if it's actually for Krishna. But you have to make sure it is, and that's why you have to be under the guidance of senior devotees and gurus and sadhus, especially Shastra, that it's bona fide. And that and then there's no karmic reaction. And Prabhupada quotes this two very important verses here. The one in the Bhagavad Gita, Yeyatam apapadyante tam tataiva bhajamyaham. It's very interesting. It's from the Gita. That as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. And bhajami means I worship them. There's a kind of word, but the worship is in the form of giving them the results of the activities and improving it. So it all depends on the surrendered mood, that whether you're going to get the blessing of success. And Prabhupada showed, it's miraculous, his success in coming to America, founding the movement, spreading it. His godbrothers were certainly astounded. And when he went back to India with that first crew in 1970, it was all the dancing white elephants, Well, these are English and Americans and Europeans, and there was this place that Surat. Those who have ever seen that was like it's full of devotees there, and so the devotees are dancing and going out in the street. People are all coming, giving them garlands. It was incredible, and so because Prabhupada's surrender, because of his sincerity, because of his purity. Even though it seemed like an impossible task, it certainly seemed so to Sumati Maraji, who was, eventually she came around and sponsored the trip. But she said, Swamiji, or whatever she called it, you're going to die there. I'm not going to give you the money, So Prabhupada had to sit in on her front step on her office. There's a picture of him standing there, black and white, for hours and hours and hours. Finally, she agreed, and. It was so, every step of the way there were difficulties. But I don't know if there's a wonderfully told all these stories in the Lilamrita, how some Scrooge of a real estate guy saw that these Prabhupada would go out and he would look at a building. Oh, this is a good building. We can actually get as a real temple rather than just a storefront. And there was one building that they were hoping to get. And I forget how they got the money together. There was $5,000, $10,000, that they gave over to this guy. And then he tried to cheat him. Prabhupada was he was on the West Coast, but they informed him, his innocent devotees that were being cheated, But Prabhupada, and this is another thing that you don't hear mentioned often. Prabhupada was a businessman. He was a skilled businessman. He had his own business for many years, and it came in very handy as the movement went on, real estate, that whole thing of getting the land in Vrindavan and Bombay Temple. He was so, even though the devotees he called off the whole deal, supposedly, Tamal, Krishna Maharaj and others, they tried to give it back. But the guy was so greedy that he didn't give the money back to us, so it wasn't really called off. And Prabhupada heard about it. I think he hung up the phone because he was calling up he was in India. But eventually he came back, and one of the things that happened is that Mr. Nair, I think his name was, right? That he had a heart attack. That Prabhupada saw that he came to meet Prabhupada and he was limping. Oh, Krishna's about to take him. And that freaked his wife out. His wife still had the papers, but she was ready to get rid of it, Even though it says in the Lilamrita, or maybe it's in that book, I'll Build You a Temple, that she had an offer of more money, which normally would have been the way in which they would have cheated, but she didn't want any part of it, because maybe she wasn't a devotee, but she believed in God, and she said, "Oh my God, my husband is going to take the land," So in many ways, Krishna, Prabhupada was the perfect candidate. Bhaktisiddhanta could see it for spreading this movement. He was very serious. He wrote and spoke very good English, and he was utterly surrendered. So Krishna reciprocated in proportion to Prabhupada's surrender. He just gave him the world, basically. Unbelievable success, So that's true for us also. Is that everything depends on sincerity, your inner mood of why you're doing things, and from everything we do, whether it's the chanting or some practical service or reading the books and how we take notes or don't take notes or try to remember, it all depends on our faith and our enthusiasm. There's those wonderful verses in the Upadeshamrita. What's favorable, for devotional service. First is what destroys devotional service. Atyahara, priyasascha, prajalpo, niyamagraha, janasangascha lalyangcha shadvi bhakti pranashyati. Pranashyati means completely destroy. So overeating, over-collecting unnecessary things, and working very hard for material, goals. Because not everyone is in an ashram, and if you're really serious about gaining, building up a big bank account, but you also go to the temple on Sunday, So that's good, but that cultivating the material desire is going to be a real impediment to advancement in devotional service. So those who are really serious, we try to take these things, very avoiding these. This is what you don't want to do. Prajalpa, nonsense talking or hearing it is very damaging. And niyamagraha means, I think, not doing the what is niyamagraha? I forget what exactly. What is it? Oh yes, niyamagraha means just going through the motions. Your heart isn't in it. Your mind may be wandering, but you're there in Mangalartik. You won't be there for long if that's your real attitude. Eventually, you give it up, because Krishna is reciprocating as you surrender. You're not surrendering, so you're not getting any nectar. And there's all kinds of distraction. I remember we had one boy here. I'm not definitely name names. Some of you remember him, and he came to me in the pandemic, and I'd always see him dancing. And he had that one phrase from that 9.9.2, I think it is, Bhagavad, joyfully performed, Susakam Kartam Abhiyam. And he was, he's having a good, he's gonna do it. He's dancing in Artik and everything. But the problem is he couldn't read very well. I think he had a problem reading. I don't know if it's dyslexia or whatever. Anyway, eventually he left. And I heard Balaram met him once, and they took a walk, and he said, "Yeah, this is just like a slave mentality, Maybe he thought of that when he was doing one of his pot washing stints. It's all bhaktas do that. Anyway, it all depends on our attitude. And this verse is so important. And then Prabhupada quotes this other verse at the end of the purport, I think, which is part of Lord Chaitanya's teaching to Sanatana Goswami, and is quoted in Madhya 19. Famous verse, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataeva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. Right? So any kind of kami, and kami is the person, kama is the attitude of strong material desire, headed by sex, but not exclusively sex. So this is nishkama. The Krishna Bhakta is nishkama. Anyabilashita shunyam. That's another way of saying it. Not your bhakti is not covered or say contaminated by material desire, by any other desire, except anukulyena Krishna anushilanam, by activity shilanam that's favorable for Krishna service, that's pleasing to Krishna. In other words, that's your motivation in everything you do. And that brings quick results, because that's really the definition of pure devotion. Now, it's hard to get to that point right away because we're so conditioned. But if we're sincere about, forgive me, I just love this word, sublimating our material desires, and Prabhupada knew that, and he knew that everyone likes to eat, and so he cooked. It was a fantastic feast, those first few Sunday feasts, before he trained up Kirtananda. And he would get a crowd. Even today, I notice on the Sunday feast, there's maybe a spotty crowd for the lecture, But when 7:15 rolls around, suddenly the temple fills up, oftentimes. I don't know if you noticed that. That's when the prasadam was sold. But the idea is that this attentiveness, what to avoid. You know the list and you try to work on it, sincerely. And you can pray also. You can pray to Krishna to please, take my mind away from these things. This is this beautiful verse I've been remembering recently. I memorized it long ago. It's from Rupa Goswami's summary of Krishna's Vrindavan Leela, which is there in the Veda base, not the IO Veda base, the one that you can put on your computer. And this is it's a beautiful summary of Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. Each Leela has its own meter, and the meter can often enhance it's according to the subject matter of the Leela. Like the description of the of Krishna stealing the clothes of the gopis. They start out, they're kind of annoyed in one way, please give us back our clothes, or we're going to tell Kamsa, or your father. And Krishna says, no, they can't do anything to me, and all this. It's a lot of banter back and forth. But it's a meter. I think it's the same meter as the prayers of the songs of the gopis, the famous chapter 31. Jayati te dikam janmanavrajak shayate indira shashvaratrehi dayate dvishyatam dikshatabakas tvahidvatasabas tvambachinbate. So you can see that's kind of a complaining meter. So anyway, in this beautiful creation of Rupa Goswami, literary creation, there's one verse, it's near the beginning, when Krishna is still a calf herd, when he gets responsibility for the calves, and then he gets, of course, for the cows later on. So it's one of the pastimes, and then this is at the end of the pastime, and it goes, I'll just give you one line. Api paramo de vajana. No, I'm losing it. But the meaning is this, is that, my dear Lord, O Lord of the calves, the calf of my mind has wandered away from the nectar stream of descriptions of you that are flowing through the Bhagavatam and other Puranas, you see. Instead of drinking there, I've gone off to a little ditch and I'm drinking the poisonous swill of sense gratification. So please take your stick of mercy and bring the calf of my mind back to the nectar stream of your descriptions about you. In other words, it's a prayer, and there's whole songs like that. Prabhupada quotes one of these songs in the second canto, I think. Not the Sanskrit, but he just gives the English translation. And the Sanskrit is just beautiful. Krishna deva babandam vande manmanasamadakadama payanita padapankatamakadande. O Krishna, dearest Lord, I bow to you and then entreat. Please place the bee of my restless mind in the honey of your lotus feet. You see? That means that the bee is going all over the place, but you're so powerful. You just attract my bee, and so I'm satisfied at your lotus feet. And then he says, I won't give you the whole Sanskrit, but he says, though even Brahma, deep in trance, cannot achieve his goal, a glimpse of your effulgent toenails soothing to the soul. Because, O Lord, I've heard of your compassion's endless waves, that vision is the only boon my poor heart craves. Something like that, if we get the actual poem. So this is a song. So many songs we read. Oh, I've been wasted my whole life. I haven't been attracted to you. Please pick me up and place me at your lotus feet. So that's the attitude of a sincere devotee. And by sincerely requesting in that way and acting in that way, then Krishna gives us the blessing. After all, he's in our heart. He can turn our minds this way or that way, So that's and here this very, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Te Vishanta. This is if you read the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the second to last verse is all about Shanti. Vihaya kama niksavan pumang chadri nikspraha nirmamo nadahankara shanti madigachati. It's the same idea. Vihaya kama, he's discarded. Vihaya means throw away. All personal material desires, you see. Pumam chadri nikspraha, and he's living free of these desires. Nirmamo, and also having no sense of possessiveness separate from Krishna. That whatever you have, you're using it for Krishna, for his pleasure, you see? And therefore, you're not contaminated with that separatist mentality. That Isha Vashamidam Sarvam, the very first verse, not the invocation, but the first verse of the Ishopanishad, that everything belongs to Krishna. We're entitled to take our quota for maintenance, obviously, but not beyond that. And whatever we can, find a way that if it's in our control, how we can engage in Krishna service. That's the Isha Vasha spirit. So that's nirmamo, nothing is mine. It's almost the same in Sanskrit and English. Nirahankara, the false ego, the false sense of bodily consciousness. That's the Shanti Madhigachati. This is the basis of peace. And it's the same idea here in this verse that Lord Chaitanya said. The Krishna Bhakta, the genuine, is nishkama and therefore peaceful. But bhukti mukti siddhi kami. So kami means someone who's full of kama. And he has three categories. Bhukti kami, that's the vast majority of people, just ordinary sense gratification, you see. But there's also mukti kamis. I thought mukti was a great, was one of our goals, right? Don't we want to get free of birth and death and go back to Godhead? It's a preliminary goal for devotees to get us going on the path, right? Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha darshana darshanam. This is one of the elements of knowledge in the 13th chapter, very important. To always see the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death. So this is a motivation for anyone. You mean it's really possible to get free of disease and death? All right, let me try it. I'll chant Hare Krishna. But if it doesn't bring you to the point of investigating who I am, why am I suffering, is there a God, what is this, who it is, then you can end up with mukti kami. You're just out for your own mukti. That's the type of material desire, and that you become agitated. Probably that is ashanta, no peace, because it's very tentative. There's that verse that the demigods speak when they're praying to Krishna and he's in the womb of Devaki. They come secretly to the prison there, where Krishna's about ready to take birth, And they're praying, and the one that Prabhupada always quotes is, Yein ye arvindaksha vimuktamaninas, tvayasta bhavad avashuddha buddhya, adu akrichena padam padam tatapatam tyado anadvida yushmarangaya. So the first thing, they're glorifying the devotees. Then they say, but there are others, ye anye, O lotus-eyed Lord, who simply think they're liberated. Vimuktamaninas, it's all in their mind, you see. But they're not. But their intelligence is impure. Afai ashtabhavat avishuddha buddhaya. And these few, there's only a few who can do this. Aduha kritrena. Does anyone know what an onomatopoeia is? It's an English. You learned it in 8th grade. Come on. No? Okay. An onomatopoeia is a word that means what it sounds like. English is full of them. Splash. You know. I mean, boom. You know. Boom. You know. It's like a sound effect in many ways. You know. So this word kritrena is an onomatopoeia for difficult austerities, you know, by which you're forcefully suppressing your material desires and things and the senses, you know, and so that you can rise up to Brahman and merge into the oneness of the beauty of the light. No more birth, no more death. You see, Brahmananda. But Brahmananda is just a negative pleasure. It means, oh, I'm not going to die anymore. But you're not serving anyone. You're not in your spiritual body, and eventually, as it says, patantyado, you come down again. So that's the mukti karmīs. Bhakti karmīs is obvious. That's everybody, you know. And then there's the siddhi karmīs. Those yogis who become. We have so many examples. Durvasa, he wasn't a devotee, you know, and he became envious of the devotees, like Ambarish, because I'm this great yogi. I have all these powers, and here's this simple bhakta, a king no less, getting adulated. I'll take care of him, you know. And he wanted to burn him to ashes, you know. Anyway, you know the story. He came on Ekadasi, was practicing strict Ekadasi just when he was supposed to break it. Let me take a bath first, and then we can have breakfast. So he stayed in the water, you know, past the time. So what's Ambarish going to do? He's very strict. We don't take it so seriously, but, you know, the time when you break. So he said, okay, I'll drink water. That's breaking and not breaking. And he's this great yogi. He's not going to take offense at just me drinking water. But he did. He said, oh, you had breakfast before me? That's a great offense. And he created this female, actually, I looked it up, Kritya, fiery demoness, you know, and it's coming at him, you know. And Ambarish, like Prahlad, yeah, he's chant Hare Krishna, this is Krishna's will, you know. Tremendous devotee. And actually the chakra had been given to him earlier at his disposal, you know. So the chakra is there, Krishna's chakra comes, annihilates the demoness, and then goes after Durvasa. So he could have been, you know, blessed by getting killed by the, you know, chakra. But no, he was scared, and he started running all through the universe, you know. And eventually he gets to Narayan in Vaikuntha, and he begs him, please, you know, it's your chakra, please. He said, I can't do anything. You know, I'm controlled by my devotees. You have to go back down to Ambarish and get his mercy. You know? So he does, and of course Ambarish calls off the chakra like that. So that's mukti karmīs. You know, they're full of desire, and they get, if they're, I mean, that's the siddhi karmīs. He had all these powers, Durvasa Muni, you know, but he wasn't a bhakta. And they're ashanta. Durvasa is a perfect example of ashanta. Hey, I'm the great yogi around here. What are you doing honoring him? You know, that's ashanta. Where the devotee says, oh, I don't want any honor. He'd take it, you know, I didn't do anything. Hare Krishna. Because they just, here, you know, here's this one-liner. It's a condensed form of, what is it? Anukulyasya sankalpa, how's it start again? Anyabilasha dashanjam. So this is a verse, and I'll end here. This is a little part of a verse from the Sandarbhas. I haven't figured out which one yet. Prabhupada says it is. And it's Jiva Goswami condensing the whole essence of what pure devotion is in like 16 syllables. Padama bhajaniya padama purusha sukha matra swasukatvam. Maybe you can count the syllables, but it's short. So bhajaniya means the worshipable one, bhajaniya. Padama Purusha, the Supreme Person, that's Krishna. The worshipable Supreme Person is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sukha Matra, only his happiness. Matra means only in this context. Sukhamatra swasukatvam. Only the happiness of the Lord, you take your happiness, bhajaniya param sukhamatra swasukatvam. Your happiness is wholly and solely dependent on the happiness of the Lord. In other words, you're taking pleasure by giving Krishna pleasure. That's your sole source of pleasure. That's what pure devotion means. You see? Whereas just the opposite is complete materialism. My happiness is only for me, you know, and my loved ones, you know, whatever, as long as they love me, you know. So it's very tentative, and it could easily evaporate. So just the opposite is, no, I have no personal desire. My only desire is to fulfill the order of the Lord for His pleasure. You know, that was Arjuna's transformation, right? He was in the purport to that verse I quoted at the end, near the end of the second chapter. There's that line. Arjun did not want to fight for his own sense gratification, which transparently means he didn't want to fight for his sense gratification. Well, he fought for some other reason. But no, because sometimes Prabhupada, English is second language. What Prabhupada means there is that at first, because then the next part of the sentence says, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, but after he heard the Bhagavad Gita, he fought for Krishna's sense satisfaction, right? Isn't that what happened? But the first part is not that he didn't want to fight for his own sense satisfaction. What it means is that for his own sense satisfaction, Arjuna wanted to quit the battle. You see? In order to satisfy his own senses, Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses. At first, Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses by not fighting. Right? Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that what the first part of the first chapter and the beginning of the second chapter is all like that? So, but then he fought for Krishna's pleasure, you see? He surrendered. Kadashe vachanam tava. I'll do what you say, right? That was the transformation he underwent. So anyway, that's the transformation we also have to undergo. And find and gradually reduce any separate pleasure or even idea that we're going to enjoy separately from Krishna, and fill it with glorification of Krishna and doing everything in ways that please Him. And that pleases Him. Why is it so pleasant? You know, it's not just the music and dancing in the kirtan, it's the actual chanting of the mantra. Why does that bring a kind of pleasure? Because it's pleasing Krishna. And the degree that you're chanting purely and with full concentration and enthusiasm, you'll get more pleasure out of it. Spiritual pleasure. That's what's going on in the spiritual world. That the devotees all want to please Krishna, and Krishna want to please the devotees by giving them spiritual bliss. And since it's spiritual, it doesn't end. It doesn't have to end. When we go back there, hopefully, right, the idea is never again. That's why you'd get Vananavartante. Once you go back there, you're not going to make the same mistake again. Come back down here. We understand that our home is at Krishna's lotus feet. All right, any discussion? I kind of went over, but I get carried away sometimes. Do we have a mic? We have two mics, but those two mics are sitting here with no one else. Yeah, Mukunda's not here, that I can tell.
I had a question, probably could be answered quickly. So, you know, we've seen the Sudarshan Chakra in action. Krishna killed Shishupal. That was evident.
Yeah, all kinds.
Yeah, all kinds. Now, it's my impression that this Sudarshan Chakra is just this blazing weapon, and just,
in other words, there's no metal involved.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering, how is Durvasa able to outrun this Sudarshan Chakra?
Because the chakra let
some
him.
kind of speed control Krishna has.
Krishna knew what was going to happen, you know. For the glorification of Ambarish, he just didn't want to kill Durvasa. He wanted to exalt Ambarish. And so that, you know, that's the whole thing. It chased him up to the heavenly,
So
to
it's
the
just
Vaikuntha.
chasing mode.
Yeah. It was on chasing control.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's an interesting question. Okay, we can adjourn. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, wait a minute. I have an announcement to make. Somebody adjusted this. This is the iPod that was in there, nicely playing the Govinda prayers every morning. This is actually bought by Jalatala. This replaced the old one that actually broke, left here by, I get to the very name. Anyway, so somebody thought to put in a whole bunch of other songs into the playlist that had Govindam. And that's why it started playing the other thing the last few days, right? Normally it would stop, because we had that problem before, and she took it home and she put one playlist that had only that Govindam in there, you see, and then it works nicely. So I would request that this not be used. If it has to be used, then you can't change the settings on there and put things in there. So I'll talk to someone. I'm taking this home. I think I have Govinda's song, and the Govinda song is now dead on here. But I should be able to fix it. If not, I'll have to give it Jalatala. She's expert. But so just a request, if you can hear me, please don't mess with it. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. We had to sing it live. Govindam Hari Purush.